You're listening to NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
So we're going to explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness.
NIL Now, covering the latest sports business headlines and keeping you informed on the nation's top performers. This is NIL Now, where the stars of tomorrow are getting noticed today.
It's the Wild Wild West, but we're wrangling it in.
Presented by Headline Studio and Reddit. Here are your hosts, Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
What is up, my fine friends, and welcome back to another episode of NIL Now, a production of Headline Studio and Reddit. We are out wherever you listen to your podcast, so please be sure to subscribe. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in my good friend, Kevin KJ Joe.
What's up? What's up? How you doing?
Seems like every week I'm eating lunch when I come on the podcast, and I just blew Kevin's mind, y'all. I just blew his mind with the Fluff-a-Nutter sandwich, which I will explain to those of you who don't know.
Not fluff another, but fluff-a-nutter.
Fluffer-nutter. Fluff-nutter. So it's a toasted sandwich with peanut butter and marshmallow fluff on it, y'all. And so we're sitting here going back and forth about the different ways that you can do it. And Kevin, my friend, thinks that there's another way that you can do it. Dean says add Nutella. I like that idea. Kevin, tell him what your idea was.
My idea is to add Biscoff. Cookie butter.
Cookie butter. That sounds incredible.
It's
I think we just invented something new. So next week, you go get it, you go try it out, and then we'll let our people know what it's all about. And then maybe we can get an NIL sponsorship out of it. That'd be pretty cool.
I know the listeners are like, what are we talking about right now?
We going down a rabbit hole. Hey, sometimes we just got to go off the rails a little bit because, you know, we are in the wild, wild west, as you always say. So we'll wrangle it back in and get to our first headline of the day.
NIL headlines.
We transfer in because that seems to be what is happening at this time of the year. Spring football is over, and now people are trying to figure out what next. So the BYU wide receiver Kody Epps is a projected starter this season after a breakout year last fall, which I actually watched this young man in action last year. He entered the transfer portal earlier this month, and then 3 days after entering his name, Epps withdrew his name from the portal and rejoined BYU, where he will play this season. During those 72 hours, Epps was in the portal. BYU coaches sent out a handful of offers to transfer portal wide receivers. Epps reportedly garnered interest from Tennessee, Ole Miss, Auburn, and Colorado, among others. And speaking of Colorado, we know how Deion Sanders views the transfer portal. Colorado will turn over 70% of its roster this offseason under Sanders. But with that being said, he decided he's going to stay at BYU. I just got to know, Kevin, if someone does that on your team, you're in the locker room, and let's just say your buddy over there, your friend, your confidant and all of this, jumps in the portal for 72 hours and comes back. How are you feeling about that as his teammate?
There's mixed feelings. I think the first thing that the people who haven't played sports are probably thinking, oh, this person is disloyal. You know, you got to ride or die with us, blah, blah, blah. I think that's like an initial feeling, but being closer to the situation, what I think is actually happening is that the athletes are speaking to each other. It's not one of those situations where guys and gals don't know what's going on with the other players, especially, you know, if you have a buddy that's on the team, you're probably having dialogue with them about what you're about to do, you know, what type of deals you're getting. So I think in this type of situation, with that happening, there's probably no harm, no foul to a teammate because some of these athletes are jumping in the portal just to gain leverage against some of the schools sometimes. So that it's like, hey, listen, you guys don't think I'm of a certain value, then, well, let me go test the waters. Sometimes that's used as a tactic to go in the portal and to, you know, make a deal happen.
I guess my biggest concern would be if that tactic is in hopes of coming back with leverage and getting to stay on the team. If you do get a coach that in fact says, all right, don't let the door hit you on the way out, that would be a very unfortunate set of circumstances. But I think you're right. I think the guys do talk, and I guess there's probably conversations happening. And I would think that Kody Epps probably had conversations with his teammates, with those around him, felt like he had some support.
Right.
Either that or felt like, there was enough kind of going in that direction to say, all right, I'm out. I'm going to see how this goes, but also felt confident when he decided to come back.
Some of them don't gain leverage. They get out into the portal and it's not as sweet as they might think it is,
Not as sweet as that Biscoff cookie butter.
Exactly. Or that fluffernutter sandwich. Get that grilled fluffernutter.
Yeah, and the thing is, he did obviously garner interest from some big-time schools. Obviously, the SEC seemed to be hitting the ground pretty hard for him. First of all, if I was an athlete, me personally, I'm going to say this me personally, I don't think I'd have the guts to jump into the transfer portal if I had every intention or a lot of intention to come back to the school.
Mm-hmm.
Because in many ways, I would feel maybe there is that betrayal. However, if you're Kody, you know what's happening behind closed doors. You know the conversations. You know what's in your best interest. It's kind of hard from us on the outside to really dig into that and to really know exactly what fed into that decision to leave in the first place. And so there's a lot that goes into this. And I think that you're right, because I think the immediate thought by pretty much everyone on the outside is like, oh, he's disloyal. He's willing to leave.
These players have exit meetings. At the end, not exit meetings, but like end of the year meetings or end of the spring ball meetings. And, sometimes, an athlete might not hear what they want to hear from the coach, like a guarantee of a certain amount of targets. Like that's something that's, how many times are you going to target me as a receiver this year? Or as a DB, am I going to be able to play in this certain type of defense? Do I got to come off the field when we're going to end one defensive package, but in another defensive package I'm in? So I think that, there's a lot that goes into it. And sometimes these athletes don't hear what they want to hear, or it's not as kosher as they want it to be. So I think that, there's a lot of different aspects that they consider and that they have to consider. And sometimes, a guy or girl getting into the portal may have a coach realize like, man, okay, there's other interests out here. Other coaches are calling us about this athlete. Maybe we need to have another conversation, a follow-up conversation to say, hey, let's think this over. Maybe we thought it was one thing, it's another, so that is actually happening. I know firsthand that those conversations are happening, after the fact or, before. So it's a lot to consider. So to say that a team or everyone might feel a certain way about it, I think it's weird because it gets almost into like a business negotiation conversation.
Yeah, and I do want to clear some stuff up because I think one of the big questions is today's transfer portal situation sustainable? And one thing that I think is interesting that's outlined in this Yahoo Sports article, basically talking about how the transfer portal works. So for those of you who don't know, basically what happens is a player enters the transfer portal by contacting the university's compliance officer. So as soon as that point of contact is made, his name is then placed in a database that triggers notification to other schools of his status. And then those schools can go out and recruit him. And also triggers a series of cutoff moves his current school can take, which includes denying him team benefits, workout facilities, locker rooms, food, amenities, all those things. In most cases, you see head coaches will pull those cards. Will say, all right, well, you're off the team. You're in the transfer portal. We'll see you. Peace out. Bye-bye now. Obviously, BYU did not do that. Is this sustainable? I mean, when you think about this, it kind of gives you an idea as to how things transcend through from point of contact to jumping in the portal. And then obviously BYU chose not to pull away from him. And, I'm wondering if more and more coaches start to do that, or if more of them continue to stay on the other side of it and say, hey, you're not interested. We don't need you here if you're going to do this. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's still very, very gray area of, I think there's a lot of circumstantial things that we on the outside just don't know about that play into these decisions.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was trying to say. But I will say that it's not, to say that it's, if it's sustainable or not, I think it's sustainable to have these type of mechanisms and tools / options for athletes, the coaches, the schools to just have. I think having these things in place are good for the conversation so that from any one of these angles, you're not just stuck with, oh, well, you're here, and this is just what it is, and you're not going to play, but you're here, and then you just got to sweat it out, and you don't have any options to do something else. That's what it used to be for the players, and that kind of, I think that sucks. And even coaches, some coaches don't want players there. Can you imagine every year recruiting kids and their families and bringing them to a university, like to your school, and loving up on them and wanting to do the right thing for them, and then you get a guy or girl that's just like a total butthead, you know what I'm saying? Like lazy, not performing. Because this is the reality too. Like we keep talking about the players and what they can, sometimes the coaches have to, bite the bullet, and they've recruited somebody that's a total dud, that's just not good at what they thought they were good at.
I like your first term better, butthead.
Oh, butthead, Beavis and Butthead. old reference. But no, just think about that. I mean, every year they're going after a new class, and then they're there at your university for at least 3 years or 4 or 5 years, and sometimes 6 and 7 because of injuries or whatever. And it's just not working out. Here's the option where you can go somewhere else, or you can send the kids, say, look, I don't know if this is going to work out here. So it shouldn't be you're just stuck there and they're stuck with you and you're on scholarship and you don't, you know what I mean? I think it's sustainable for those reasons. Something else I wanted to say is from each angle, whether it's the coach, the player, or the administration, whoever it is, I heard a quote lately that said, anything you mismanage, you'll lose, right? So if you're mismanaging those relationships, you're not checking in, you're not helping out. If you mismanage your skills, you're not going to be better. If you mismanage your health, you're going to be not healthy. It's a thing that I think can be sustainable, but the people that are involved, the different angles, just need to manage it right.
Yeah, good stuff there. Now, let me jump to our next headline here that is interesting because we continue on this AI, artificial intelligence train with our conversation.
Every time I hear AI, I think of Allen Iverson, by the way. So shout out to Allen Iverson. we talking about homework.
AI. We talking about homework. We're not talking about practice. We're talking about homework.
Oh, man.
I like that. That's good. Basically, LSU players still signing those deals with Cactus AI. We got to go back to several months ago. I can't even keep up with how long ago it was, but it was when Livy Dunn, the gymnastics phenom that has taken over the NIL world, essentially signed a deal with Cactus AI. And there was, I guess, a note that came out from the school, from LSU, stating that, they don't condone cheating or any sort of plagiarism that could be involved with using artificial intelligence. But then later on, more players have since signed. So interesting. I want to listen to this clip real quick. An interview with WDSU 6, Darren Rovell on the Action Network spoke about NIL specifically at LSU. Here's what he had to say.
You have the LSU basketball team, and now you have Haley joining the team. I mean, the fact that if you're one of those other players who is not them, you'd want to be on that team, because you're then proving yourself in front of an audience, including that corporate audience that is paying them big bucks.
All right, so as mentioned there in the last episode, and Darren mentioned it just then, former Louisville star Haley Van Lith is transferring to LSU, but she's not the only transfer moving to play for the defending national champions. Are you ready for this, y'all? Okay, here's where we dig a little deeper. We get out that shovel. Let's dig the trenches out, because this story with this artificial intelligence just gets a little stickier and stickier.
I got cactus juice.
Yeah, that cactus juice. Aneesah Morrow is transferring to the Tigers after an All-American season at DePaul. But she, too, has teamed up with Cactus AI to announce her transfer. So essentially, in a paid partnership brand, she asked the artificial intelligence thing to essentially say, hey, where can I go? What's the best place for me? Where can I elevate my game? The artificial intelligence guides her to Baton Rouge to play for the LSU Tigers. And again, here we stand where Livy Dunn, we talked about that earlier, and then Angel Reese both have partnered with Cactus AI, now Morrow. And so you just wonder, after the school puts out the release saying, nope, you can't do this, or we don't stand by this, and yet it seems like Cactus AI is almost in many ways monopolizing these athletes in Baton Rouge, because that's obviously made substantial headlines here as in the last several months. So I don't know what to make of this because we've heard nothing else from LSU after that statement was made. I mean, have you heard anything else, Kevin? Because I've done some digging and I have not seen anything.
No, I haven't heard anything. It makes me think that it's a great deal. I think it's creative. It's funny how you would come out on campus and have a conversation about it, but then the athletic department is not like nipping it in the bud. So that tells me that there's probably been some conversations in the background that we're not privy to, that they at least have to, as a school, say what they said, but they can't stop people from using it. So I think that's why they're, I guess, allowing them to do it. But it's like I told you before, like the athletic department is the front porch of the university. So to me, it's kind of weird that they are allowing it to happen.
So in other words, they put out the notice and then they wipe their hands and back up.
And then they back up.
That's what I'm thinking.
They backing that thing up like Juvenile.
Oh, girl, you look good. Why don't you back the thing up? That's my jam. I love me some Juvenile. And I'm very interested in it. It is funny because I've actually never used that software or whatever, but my husband did, and I might have mentioned this before. He just wanted to see how it worked. So he basically said, give me a 45-second presentation on, my roofing company. 45, literally to a T, 45 seconds exactly. And I guess it just goes in and like pulls all this stuff from, whatever they can find on the web about that particular roofing company and about other roofing companies and what makes them successful. And it's crazy because it literally sounded so professional and it sounded so curated just for that particular company. And I'm like, wow, literally mind-blowing. But look, let me just tell you this before we jump in with our friend Bobak. The way our world works right now is pretty crazy because there's this other discovery that we had this weekend, in fact, on the phone that my husband pointed out to me. Like, you can literally take your iPhone now and take a picture of a plant, a bird, a car, and literally hit the I button after you take the photo, the information button, and it will literally tell you what that bird is, what that plant is, what that car is. Like, it literally knows everything. And it just amazes me how these search engines and the amount of information that's being curated out there is literally taking over. Do you think artificial intelligence, though, like, do you have any question or concern that it is any sort of plagiarism or no?
I think that some people are going to use it the wrong way. It's the same thing that we were just talking about a few minutes ago when I was saying mismanaging things. Like, you mismanage this tool, it's going to get you in trouble. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's early right now, and we still kind of got to see what the effects that it's going to have on society. But I do think it's a powerful tool. I mean, you've seen certain things where, it answers some questions that might hint at it's like cures for cancer and stuff like that. So everything has both sides to it, the positive and negative effects on society, just like social media. You use it too much, you're on it too much, you miss out on a host of other things on development and your health and all this stuff. So I think I'm kind of on the fence with it. I do think it's a cool tool. Like, I think it's cool that us humans create these crazy technologies that further our existence. Yeah, I'm still looking forward to it. I like the concept of it. I like what it can do, but like how you use it, that's the key.
I think we should do a test run at some point. We will tell AI to give us an entire segment that we will just read whatever the artificial intelligence says about a particular topic. Do you think we could get away with that, Dean?
That's what it's gonna sound like when you get caught on the Cactus AI trying to do the script for the show.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right. Without further ado, let's jump into our second segment of the day. Mr. Bobak. Hi, Ari. What's up, Bobak?
Hey, Lauren and KJ. How are you two doing?
Good, bro. Good to see you.
doing well. We got off the rails a little bit in the first segment with me always eating something unique and different or childish. Okay, let's see if Bobak knows. Bobak, do you know what a fluffernutter sandwich is?
I am aware of them. They're like what? Peanut butter and marshmallow?
Oh, this
Yes.
knows everything.
Of course he knows. See? Thank you. Well, KJ thinks that instead of doing peanut butter, you should do the Biscoff cookie butter spread. You think that'd be good?
Oh, that would be interesting.
Have you had the spread?
I haven't had this spread. I don't think I have, because Biscoff is just what they give you on like a Delta plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no,
like Delta crackers. I didn't even know they were a real company. I just figured they made them up.
No, bro.
It's
I'm
a real
telling you,
company.
it's amazing.
Okay, let's get this show back on the rails for a moment. Cool little headline. Notre Dame is on the open market because their contract is officially expired with Under Armour. And now, who is going to be the likeliest taker of their apparel deals moving forward?
Yeah, and this is kind of an interesting topic, especially in the NIL realm, because Andy Staples, who's over at The Athletic, and he's been everywhere, he came up with a fun idea. He was thinking, like, why doesn't Notre Dame and schools like them do apparel deals for the normal stuff, the jerseys, and other clothing items, but leave something like shoes available as an optional NIL deal? So a player going to Notre Dame or going to Texas or wherever can, they'll be whatever school they are, Nike with Texas, whatever Notre Dame signs with. And then, but their shoe deal is optional. They could actually get an NIL shoe deal before they go to the school and wear that for their time. Kind of like how the NBA, the players can have their own shoe deals regardless of what the team jerseys look like. And I think to some extent, this might be a little bit more applicable in a college basketball, men's and women's aspect. In fact, that's come up. I forgot the athlete's name, but she moved schools and she had a deal with the school she was at. I believe it was Puma deal, because she went to LSU and LSU had a Nike deal. But so we're starting to see that in some NIL deals for athletes who are already in college. Now, college football might be a little more difficult. I mean, Staples even says, like, I'm not sure who would necessarily be the caliber of a player who would be able to get that kind of deal. I mean, is it Caleb Williams? Is he really the only player who could get a shoe deal and then people would notice? It's unclear. But I mean, I remember listening to the discussion on our CFB. Somebody pointed to SRS House. He pointed to that scandal a few years ago when Adidas got into hot water when they were, it was like a pay-for-play deal where they were paying people to steer high-profile basketball recruits to Adidas-sponsored college basketball programs, and people went to prison for that. So there is definitely that kind of interest, especially in what high school and college athletes are wearing on their feet. One of the fun ones I got to throw in there too, and this always comes up when we're talking wacky college athletic deals, because everyone knew Nike, everyone knows, Adidas, Reebok's locked up in the NFL. They don't care about the college. And you've got, Under Armour's now pulling back. There was a beautiful moment in FBS football when UConn wore Aeropostale jerseys. And it was the kind of arrangement, like, people think it's fun to just see the picture of, Dan Orlovsky wearing a Aeropostale like logo where a Nike swoosh would be. But the actual story behind it's even better. I mean, I love it as a lawyer, but I think anyone could appreciate this. It's a quirk in the deals they had going in there, because UConn historically is obviously a basketball school. They also have some D1 hockey going there. So they had signed an agreement with Nike for those two sports. And then they decide to move their football team up to FBS. So suddenly there's like a window of time there where they hadn't made an arrangement with Nike to make jerseys for the football team, and Aeropostale had the contract and could, it hadn't expired yet. So I assume they went with like some private manufacturer or just paid, maybe they just paid Nike and then, private labeled it. So they had the Aeropostale on all of their football gear because of that weird arrangement. So maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need, Andy proposes Lululemon. I think that would be awesome. Lululemon, they make good material. I mean, On Reddit, we have this classic problem. Not everyone likes to read the article. Some people thought this was literally what was happening, that Notre Dame was actually going to sign with Lululemon rather than Andy Staples coming up with a suggestion. Pay for your news, people. I'm just telling you out there, it's worth paying for your newspaper. And I'm saying that knowing that this is also advanced media, but The Athletic, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, I don't care. Wherever you're getting your news, pay for the damn thing. That way you'll read these articles and be smarter. But from the humor side, a Michigan fan, Epoxy81, said, "What about khakis?" He's asking for a friend. Can there be some nice khaki deal for the players there? An LSU fan just wanted to know if they'd throw in leggings from Lululemon for free, because that would be, definitive scribbles. Notre Dame campus about to be cake central. This is the best part. A Notre Dame fan actually chimed in, seeing a key. We did have a controversy a few years ago where someone's mom wrote into the school paper to complain about women wearing leggings. Can you imagine somebody's mom writing into the college paper? The editors of the college paper, like, we're printing this letter. We are printing this letter.
Yeah, no kidding.
Can you imagine that person like, "Mom, come on. Oh my God." It'd be better if she even wrote like, "Hi, my name is Sally whatever. My son or daughter is blah, blah, blah." That would have been, I would have loved that. Oh my goodness.
Let's jump to this next one, and then we'll get out of here and get to our guest. So Missouri, we got an NIL law discussion. Coaches may now discuss NIL directly with recruits. Recruits may earn NIL once they sign their national letter of intent. The NCAA/SEC may not penalize recruits and or school for doing so. Player may use school's logo in NIL. And these deals, the deal details are protected by the FERPA, which I don't know what FERPA stands for, but maybe you can enlighten us, Bobak.
Sure, yeah. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's basically what says they can't just give away your educational record, and it kind of protects college students. That, I would say, is probably the only point that seems to be controversial with everybody. The idea that these deals are now like top secret and protected by that kind of a legal sort of protection that goes to your educational records rather than a contracted deal. Because I think there's a strong consensus where a lot of fans, especially on RCFB, but I'm sure elsewhere, even if you're good with the NIL arrangements, a lot of them would love them to be publicly kind of accessible so people could kind of compare both the player. I mean, to an extent, that would be beneficial for some players to see what the Joneses are getting. But at the same time, I think just to make sure that things are being done above the table, since technically now that's what NIL is all about. All of these arrangements can be done over the table. But the really big one, I would say the one that's getting the most discussion about what Mizzou did, is the ability for high school recruits to sign NIL deals as soon as they sign a letter of intent. Of course, the way this deal is arranged, it's a letter of intent with an in-state school. So congrats, Mizzou Tigers. But and some others. I mean, someone's saying this is going to be the moment the Truman State Bulldogs rise to become the next big team. And hey, at RCFB, we pay attention to all levels. The Northwest Missouri State Bearcats, they won 3 of the last 10 D2 national titles. So they're a weird D2 school that might actually be able to get some NIL money coming in. So, on a localized level, but hey, yeah. So that suddenly throws an interesting point there, though, because you can now get in-state recruits, because Missouri's always had talent. They've got 2 large metropolitan areas with the Kansas City market and the St. Louis market, and all of the players that come out of there. And historically, they've been poached by many other states, both nearby, but being in the SEC, they really are competing against everybody. So this might give Mizzou an extra, until others potentially catch up, ammunition to basically compete with everyone else. I mean, there was one of our users, Bombay Geese Hunter, Mizzou's still going to lose out on players, but at least Missouri is trying to throw them a bone. Mizzou's biggest issue is that their insanely wealthy alumni don't donate the same way other alumni groups do. They need the Cronkies to start giving back. Maybe if we get a few Final Fours or college football playoff runs, we can learn to forget about the Rams. But it's definitely been something interesting. And as again, a Ohio State fan, CJ Beathard's hair, those are some pretty open-ended rules. If Mizzou gets their NIL together, they could really do some damage.
Maybe. Maybe they can. I mean, first of all, you got to have a bunch of players coming out of Missouri, the state of high school, to be, you know what I mean, to be worth for the rules to really, you know, be what it is. But it's also an example, right, that, you know, other states could follow. And then that will really create a crazy advantage for some states who have a bunch of players in high school that are really good.
You're listening to NIL Now.
All right, thanks, Lauren. I am jumping in front of the microphone now to welcome on a former guest, Professor Dave Meluni of Syracuse University, who teaches, dare I say, the top NIL class in the country. I'm saying it. I don't know if he'll say it too, but Professor Meluni, thanks so much for joining us back in the show. How's everything going?
Great. Thanks for having me. We just finished up an awesome commencement weekend, and I'm excited. A bunch of things we got going on NIL this summer. We'll talk about a little bit today, but no, everything is good. And, you know, a huge shout out to our recent graduates in Falk College and the rest of the university. So, yeah, all's good.
First things first, from the last time we spoke in January, I believe, was when you were on the show. A lot has changed in the world of NIL since then. Just a few things that jump out to me are, you know, Charlie Baker has taken over with the NCAA. You know, we kind of saw the rise of women in NIL and college sports with the college basketball tournament. I guess, what are just some things, some of the biggest changes in NIL that you're seeing right now, especially since we spoke last in January?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, you know, that are evolving or changing every single day. But I think the one that you hit the nail on the head is where women athletes stand in NIL right now, and they're crushing it, right? You've seen with Angel Reese, you saw the Caitlin Clarks. You made a little bit of mention here with the women's lacrosse team at Syracuse, who's got a big game here tomorrow, and then hopefully moving on to the Final Four and taking home another title here in the academic year on top of men's soccer. So from the standpoint of engagement, that hasn't changed. Some really cool stuff when you're looking at what brands are looking for and how, you know, women athletes are doing a really good job in the engagement. I'm not saying male athletes are not, but just women are doing a better job right now. And ironically, I had a call yesterday in one of my other classes. We've been working on a project with Oakley, and we actually had 3 students yesterday present to Oakley what they had done for their projects. And one piece of the project was NIL activations, and it was surrounding women softball players. So that's pretty much all I can say. But we know what's coming up here with the Women's College World Series, which does staggering numbers in viewership on ESPN and even on ABC now. So I think the one piece here is how this is going to evolve a little bit with women athletes, female athletes. And I'll be curious in the fall, you know, when we get into, you know, the soccer, volleyball, so on and so forth. And I really want to see what happens here with women's softball because of the viewership.
Yeah. And that's a great transition into, you know, the partnership that your students and your class, I guess, had with the Syracuse women's lacrosse team this past semester. On the last time that you were on, you kind of, you know, spoke about what that was all about. But if you could just remind us, you know, what kind of went on this semester, how'd it go?
Yeah.
You know, how did the students do? And, you know, all that.
Yeah. So what we did is we had 40 students in the class. We had 25 women's lacrosse players at Syracuse opt into the project. And then either groups of 1 or 2, however we had broken out, I can't remember right now, but we built 25 marketing decks. And when I mean marketing decks, it was that the students had direct communication with the student athletes. So one, they basically talked about their personal interests, how they were doing on the field, regardless if they were a starter or they didn't play 1 minute. They basically built a camp surrounding the athlete and what they could do either in their hometown or so on and so forth. We worked with Christopher at FanWord. They built a FanWord profile for each of the athletes that brings in their Twitter, their Instagram, Cuse.com, any stories that might transpire along the lines about them. They built a merchandise line, and then they used a program called Sponsor United, and they identified 5 brands per Sponsor United and why that would be a fit, and then also tied in a charitable component. So the projects were unbelievable. I mean, from number 1 to 25. I mean, they just did an amazing job building logos, using fan word. They spent the entire semester. They tracked the athletes on social media, created infographics. Our students, walk away with invaluable experience, and the student athlete now has this entrepreneurial sort of workbook that they can use, or they can even edit, because a lot of it was done on Canva, that they can now turn it over to the athlete. So very impressive.
You also, the last time you were on, you mentioned something with the Yankees' Oswaldo Cabrera, which sounded pretty cool. Was that involved with your class, and how did that all work?
Yeah, so this is, I'm a huge experiential learning person, because I'm not a PhD, right? I'm a professor of practice of some kind. So Brandon Steiner, who's an alum of the university, who is on our advisory board, reached out and simply said that, he's working with Oswaldo Cabrera. He has a great relationship with the Yankees, very close with Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter. And Oswaldo's a young guy. And he said, hey, I know your NIL class is probably got a million different things that you're doing, and it's surrounding collegiate athletics. Is there anything we can do with Oswaldo? And I said, Brandon, not in the NIL class, but I also teach a class called Sports Sponsorship and Promotion. So this was really awesome. And I'll share kind of how this has transpired. I was working on this today, believe it or not. So we had 32 students in the class. We asked all of them, if you want to build a deck, or there was another part of the project. So 14 opted into 14 decks, multiple students. I don't know, ended up being 20 something out of the 32 wanted to work on it. So we built these decks. Oswaldo Cabrera at spring training, I remember like it's yesterday, he Zoomed with us from his car in between a workout, talked to the class. Brandon came to class in April, went back through sort of everything with Oswaldo. They turned these in early May. I turned around and graded them. And now we've selected 8 students, and we've invited them to Yankee Stadium on June 7th to see the White Sox. And Brandon has facilitated after the game up in New Rochelle. We're all going to stay in New Rochelle, take the train down, and we're going to do a meet and greet, or, pizzas or something. I don't know if Oswaldo even eats pizza, right? Something after the game, meeting him at one of the meeting rooms at the hotel. And 7 of the students are able to make it. I will obviously be there. Brandon will be there. It's just really cool. And I can't say there's any other schools in the country doing this. I'm sure they are, but our alums are amazing to have these opportunities. And the cool part is, one of the students that got picked, she actually was in the NIL class at the same time. So there's probably a reason she got picked, because her work's fantastic. But she was also able to piggyback what she had seen in NIL.
Yeah, the next generation of NIL difference makers going right through your classroom.
I hope so. I hope so.
That's right. Professor Dave Meluni of Syracuse University, thank you so much for joining us. Again, a 2-time guest now. You all can follow him on Twitter at Dave Meluni. Last name is Meluni. Dave, Professor Meluni, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks again.
You got it. That does it for this week's episode of NIL Now. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at NIL Now Show and on Reddit at RNIL. Tell a friend, let us know what you think about the show, and find next week's episode out wherever you listen to your podcasts. Oh, and be sure to subscribe. A big thank you to Bobak and the Reddit college football team for their help. You can follow them on Twitter at RedditCFB and online at RCFB. Thank you to our co-hosts Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones. And a big thanks to our audio engineer Colin Schmeling and our executive producers Richard Diamond, Selena Roberts, and Scott Brodor. Until next week, we will see you.
Thanks for listening to NIL Now, presented by Headline Studio and Reddit.